Hello, I'm a JTR fanboy, and this is my review of the JTR RS1. The best subwoofers in the world are in my living room. No? I don't know what to tell them then. Hey, spoiler alert, man, I love my JTR subs, man, but I'll give you my honest opinion of my RS1s after 4 years. And if I tend to get a little bit extra in this review and you think I'm adding on a little bit, man, just take what I say with a grain of salt. And if I miss anything, ask in the comments and I'll do my best to answer your questions. And if I don't know, then I'll say I don't know. All right, it's as simple as that. 4 years ago, I went from SVS PB1000s or dual SVS PB1000s to dual JTR RS1s. And I knew I needed to upgrade because these PB1000s were kind of struggling to actually pressurize this open concept living room and this open concept space that we have down here. So we kind of knew that, well, I kind of knew that I needed to do something a little bit different to get the output that I was really looking for. All right. So I knew I wanted to maximize the bass without disrespecting the room design too. So matter of fact, speaking of disrespecting the room design, let's get this thing fixed up right here. Right here, I have had this for the longest time, a black cord right here plugged in. I don't know why it's taking me so long to change it. So let's get this black cord changed over to this white cord. All right, so here we go. All right, nice and easy, it's all done. So like I said, I had to consider the room size and I also had to consider the size of the subwoofer cabinet. I had my SVS PB1000s that measured 19 inches high by 15 inches wide by 20 inches deep. All right. So what I was considering though was the PB2000. The PB2000 has a 500 watt amp and it measured in at 21 inches by 17 inches by 23 inches. My second consideration at this point was going all the way up to the PB16 Ultra with the 1500 watt amp that measured 25 inches by 22 inches by a whopping 31 inches deep. I always assumed that a ported sub would be better for bass, like many people did. Many people have for a long time, but considering the ported to be the superior design for a subwoofer. But in 2021, at least when I recognized, was the beginning of the revolution that a sealed sub could actually outperform or perform just as good as some ported subs. And JTR was probably on everybody's radar back then. So my new list got updated. Now we're talking about a sealed subwoofer in a living room space, which if it can fit the bill, is going to be better far as size goes. So my new list was a Monoprice Monolith SW15. That one had a 600 watt amp and measured in at 18 inches by 21 inches by 23 inches. And then the JTR RS1 that measured in at 21 inches by 21 inches by 18 inches and had a 2400 watt amp. So as you can see from my options being ported or sealed, looking at the pros and cons, a PB2000, we don't get that much more output out of that thing. It's only got a 500 watt amp. So I don't know, I didn't know if that was actually gonna do the job. So now we're talking about the PB16. So the PB16 Ultra got chopped off the list because it is 31 inches deep. So that had to go. So again, now we're talking about sealed speakers, and I had the only two options for sealed speakers, and that Monolith has a 600 watt amp, which is pretty good, and I was definitely considering it. But when you look at the JTR RS1, it's roughly the same size. Actually, it's a little bit smaller than that SW15. You have a 15-inch woofer with a 600 watt amp compared to an 18-inch woofer with the 2400 watt amp. We're talking about 4 times the output or the wattage on that amp or the JTR RS1. Of course, it fit the space. It was going to fit the space. These two were going to fit the space. But as you can imagine, that JTR price terrified me, man. And I'm not even going to lie. I'm not going to lie. I was terrified like a lot of people at that price. So I obviously pulled the trigger and I purchased the JTR RS1s. I purchased a pair of JTR RS1s. So after hearing all the positive reviews that were out back then and looking at the specs, and really there was really no downside in getting it. Again, we're just talking about the price. And if you can get over that hurdle, I don't think there's a whole lot better today than when you talk about the size and you talk about the price and you talk about the performance of a subwoofer. So again, that's just my opinion. And after 4 years, I do it all again because after 4 years, I don't have any plans to upgrade my subwoofers at all. All right, man, let me show some measurements real quick to you of my RS1s in my space. I do use a mini DSP to do all the EQ for the subs. Shout out to Elevated Calibration Inc. to getting this last calibration done for me. I have done my own mini DSP calibrations in the past, but this latest one was done by Elevated Calibration Inc. Shout out to Brandon for that. All right, so in my room, I get bass response down to 13 hertz. All right, so that's kind of where the low end is in this room, just based on the space and amount of volume, again, that we're trying to pressurize in this space. And here's my house curve. This is what my house curve looks like currently, what it's set to. All right, here's a shot of what the raw measurements were before any EQing went into these subwoofers. And I do have these two JTRs and a third sub for a little bit more tactile feel. Now, lastly is the flat EQ setting they have right here. So this flat EQ setting, I use this when I'm playing music. It's definitely better for music not to have all the extra low end extension and get the more visceral feel in the music from the sub. All right, there are a lot of positive things that I love about my JTR RS1s. However, I do share one concern. One concern I do have is speaker hum. So we're not flawless. My JTR subs do have an audible hum, a hum that is noticeable when you use the RCA inputs. So I use the RCA inputs due to having to use the mini DSP for EQing. Now, the XLR connections on the JTR subs do not share this problem. I've only heard it from other users that use the RCA connection. So I found the perfect solution though for the ground loop hum issues through the RCA. And this hum isolator by Jensen is the simplest to use, and it kills 100% of the unwanted noise in the hum. All right, is one RCA in or coming from your output of your receiver, whatever, in, and then an RCA out to the sub LFE, and that's it. All right. I do not recommend these ground lifters here, but you see, if they wanted a power cord without a ground, then they would have probably put it in a box. So it came with one that has a ground, so that's what we're gonna use. Now, after I put these subs in here and got it all tuned and EQ'd, it's definitely a new level of bass in this room. So it's kind of hard to explain. The bass is always gonna be effortless. The bass is always gonna be full, and it's always gonna be powerful, even at low levels. Of course, when you turn it up, you're rocking, but at the lower levels, the bass is always really smooth, and it's hard to, like I said, it's hard to explain, but you can always tell that there's a large driver in here. So even if you couldn't see that speaker, you would understand that that's not a 10 or 12-inch woofer just by what the bass sounds like. So it's kind of hard to explain, like I said, but that's what it sounds like to me. If anything, I needed to tame the bass in this room, which leads me to the question, do I really need this much power, this much bass in my room?
Man, hell no!
Nah, not really. But if I think about the sub that I had on my list before, I probably would have upgraded by now or be thinking about it. So Ain't no buyer's remorse over here because I would have spent at least what I spent on these subwoofers upgrading. And that's kind of what happened when you get the upgrade-itis. You don't calculate it until after the fact. So I'm really happy that I made the purchase that I made when I made it. Now, I'm not your financial advisor, but big subs, not subs, but big subs, we're talking 18 inches and bigger, should be a huge part of your home theater budget. Big subs can take a mediocre system to a new level almost instantly. Now, I always say buy what you can afford with a good conscience, or you can bury your conscience and buy something as good as JTR subwoofers. No, man. No, man. Be happy with the subs you have until you are able to upgrade safely. It's okay to have whack subs until you can afford better ones. I did it for years. But really, a well-tuned system using good room correction or maybe a mini DSP can do wonders for the bass performance in your home theater. Just don't let the bass in my living room be better than the bass in your dedicated theater. It's not a good look. Man, I look, all right. Man, all right, I'm kidding, man. You know what they say, man. It's not the size of the boat, it's about the motion in the ocean. If you had a bigger boat, though, you don't have to work as hard. That's all I'm saying. Yes, I'm still talking about subwoofers. Bottom line, man, love your subs, man. Enjoy this hobby, all right? I'm sure your subs are super cute. All right. That's enough, man. All right, let me know in the comments what size subwoofers are you rocking right here or right now, and let me know what's on your radar as far as upgrades that you plan to make in the future. So now, this time right now is your turn to brag in the comments. So get in the comments and let me know what you're rocking or what you plan on rocking. All right, and while you're here, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This is Genius Home Theater. My name is Ron, and I will see you on the next one.